Year-old business. They got 18,000 workers, and they say that they are now shuttering everything down, and they are going to go into bankruptcy. So there goes Twinkies, Wonder Bread, Ding Dongs, Snowballs, Ho-Hos, Donuts. They were named at a different time. They were named 82 years ago, apparently. All right, I don't think people would go with Ho-Hos today. But anyway, now let's take a look at their differing signs on why they're going under.
This morning, Hostess filed a motion with U.S. Bankruptcy Court to close its doors for good, liquidating its assets and selling off its iconic brands. The company says it simply does not have the resources to weather the strike. But workers say if Hostess is low on dough, it should find other ways to cut costs.
We're not just some greedy union workers, man. I mean, we all have families out here, risk and mortgages, car payments, everything.
Now, that's the two sides, and in fact, one of the heads of the unions that was on strike said, quote, Frank Hurd, our members know that the plans all along of the Wall Street investors currently in control of this company did not include the operation of Hostess brands any longer than it takes to sell the company in whole or in part in a way that will maximize profits of these vulture capitalists regardless of the impact on the workforce. Now, let's open it up to everybody. Tricia, Michael, Anna, and JR are here. So we looked into it. They are owned by a private equity firm. The fact that they're owned by a private equity firm does not mean that that's it. That's the end of the question. So it must have been vulture capitalists. But oftentimes what private equity firms do is they load up a company with debt. And the reason they do that is then they take some of that money out and put it in their pocket. That's how Bain Capital made a lot of money. The reason I know all about this is we studied Bain Capital for months on end, right? And a lot of times the companies are in perfectly good shape, like Dade International. They did the same thing, loaded up with debt, took the money out, put it in their pockets, crashed it, went to bankruptcy, but then Dade comes out of bankruptcy, perfectly profitable company. The debt was the problem. And even the restructuring guy here says, well, look, we didn't make enough capital investments. Why didn't you make enough capital investments? Because you had too much debt. And then what do, guys? They blame the workers.
Mm-hmm. That's the worst part of the story. Right now, they're basically using the unions as the
worst part of the story is that the snack cakes are going away.
Yeah, well, I mean, I disagree with that a little bit. You know, I might miss the cupcakes a little bit, but I can live without it. The worst part is, you know, the unions are the scapegoat. People will now turn to this story as an example of why the unions are unreasonable and why companies go bankrupt, because the unions are asking for too much and they just will not negotiate. They will not strike a deal. And no one is really going to delve into the details of why this company filed for bankruptcy. And that's the real problem here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really sad thing. I mean, to hear that guy say, you know, look, we're not greedy. You know, I mean, on the one hand, you know, I've given up Ho-Hos a long time ago. So my main concern really has really much more to do with the way in which workers are just being crushed. So when they come back after their debt has been solved, then they just find some new workers to exploit. And we really, it's an appalling thing.
All right, now if you were not sure if you should be angry at management, let me show graphic C6B here. Okay, you ready for this? The company is also seeking permission to pay a group of 19 managers bonuses ranging from 25% to 75% of their annual base compensation. Those payments would total up to $1.75 million. Now, wait a minute. Why would you get a bonus for driving your company into bankruptcy? Doesn't it say so much about the assumptions? Obviously, it's the workers' fault. They were too greedy. But even though we bankrupted the company, we still want $1.75 million.
It's the same model we see when we talked about Romney after he lost the election, talking about how, well, you know, all the certain groups that President Obama targeted to give you all that money, instead of going to the groups that we target to give all of your money to, instead, it's the hierarchy. Somebody's going to get this money for free, and it's the wrong people. So we have to blame the workers because, I mean, they're only making $30,000 a year. It's the same model no matter what levy and whether it's with this corporation or with this politician.
Great point. And you'll remember that Romney and his campaign gave bonuses to the upper management of his campaign twice during the campaign.
Because the upper management wins no matter what. That is the assumption, and it's always the workers' fault. And by the way, it's not an accident. They do this. These companies own not just Hostess, but they run a lot of different companies. They want to send a message here. Hey, don't you ever strike. Because if you ever strike, we're going to say, oh, that's it. You remember Twinkies? That's why Twinkies went under. So speaking of which, Walmart